You've reached the Peak Perspectives, with your hosts, AP and VC. Get to know Denver and the surrounding area through the people who make it special. We sit down for engaging interviews and discussions with individuals who have unique connections to the Mile High City and beyond. Welcome back to Peak Perspectives, Colorado, where Colorado spirit meets the power of personal narrative. Each episode invites you into a candid conversation with changemakers, creatives, and everyday people shaping the soul of the region. We learn about their backgrounds and what inspired or led them to where they are now. From Southern Colorado to the heart of Denver and beyond, we explore stories that inspire, inform, challenge, connect, and entertain, one voice or a story at a time. Now, I'm your host, AP. VC is off today. Now, our story today is more about a Denver institution and landmark than a person. Our guest today has a very personal connection to that landmark and has graciously agreed to share that with us. So let's welcome Ms. Beatrice Freelo Griffin. B, how are you today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me, AP. I
Well,
appreciate it.
thanks for coming on. We appreciate that. So what we like to do here is, of course, start with the basic background, where you grew up, some of your early childhood experiences, and so forth. So take it away.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, you happen to know a little bit about me since we had crossed paths in our early youth, but
Yeah.
my days on this planet started in 1952. I'm an only child born to two parents who didn't think they would have any children, so they were a little late in life children, woman and man. So, born on 23rd and High Street, went to Loyola Elementary School, and then also to Annunciation, and then I got a chance to get my wings at East High School, where I became a graduate of the East High Angels. Angels, and proud of it.
Angels for
Uh,
life.
Angels for life. That is correct. I got married early on, back in the days when folks just you do certain things and have certain activities happening in your life. Everybody's going to get married, so that was my beginning of my early parenting life. But it worked out well. We didn't remain married but 10 years, but beautiful children, beautiful grandchildren. I have no complaints. I got my graduate degree in communication from Regis, worked a couple of jobs, phone company, the utility company, which would have been those days public service. And
Right.
then I just recently retired from Kaiser Permanente, and great love for photography and music. And I'm happy to still be here on the planet.
Yeah, we're happy that you're still here as well. Yeah, as you mentioned, we go back a ways. And
Mhm.
unbeknownst to us at the time, I guess we lived right around the corner from each other. Because I was
Yes.
on 26th and Vine. Used to go past Loyola all the time. But those were some good times. Those were really some good times. Now, let's get to the story about the institution that we're going to speak about today. And I will just preface it by saying it's known as the Pride of the Points. And tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, it is. Thank you for saying that. My father, as he had told me before his demise, before he passed on, it was his privilege and honor to become a fireman for Firehouse Number 3, which is located at 2500 Washington Street. It is the oldest and smallest operating firehouse in the city and county of Denver today. Um, it was totally segregated from the day it was built in 19. They started in 1925. They completed it in 1931, and they remained an all-black firehouse until 1958. But it was considered the finest firehouse in Denver because, as many folks know, we have to be the very best at what we do just to be considered average.
Right.
So Captain Healy gave my father the opportunity to start his career there. He was a busboy at the Denver Athletic Club. Had asked him, well, Frelo, what do you think you want to do with your life? And I guess my father at 25 said, well, let's see, America. Huh, black man in America. And I don't know. What are you offering? So he said, well, I'll give you a shot to take the test as a fireman. And as my mother recanted many times, my dad studied harder for that test than he had ever studied for anything in his life. And ultimately was able to become a fireman. Again, to the point that you made, calling it the firehouse, calling it the pride of the points, it was exactly that. It was the golden gem that sat there on Washington Street. It was more than just a firehouse. Uh, they had their own barber shop there, so they would cut not only the firemen's hair, they'd also cut the neighborhood kids' hair. You could bring your car over and they'd work on your car because unfortunately they didn't always get the top of the line equipment they should have. So they were always having to fix their own rigs, uh, which ultimately I think caused problems later on, which we'll get to. But yeah, it was a great job. It is still that same jewel of the 5 Points, and very proud individuals work there, and the community is very proud to have that firehouse still standing.
Yeah, now I also, along with you talking about washing the vehicles and so forth, I remember reading that due to their color, they were even assigned to service and wash the vehicles for the other stations. Um,
Yes, yeah,
now, today, that just seems ridiculous,
it
but
does.
at the time, that's what it was. But like you said, they had to do twice as much to be considered half as good. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. I think it even stems prior to the firehouse being built there when they did have an all-black crew. They didn't call them firemen. There had been a terrible fire back in the 1800s, which took all of the firemen, including the white captain that died in the St. James fire. So, um, this is just how things were. Not exactly, definitely not fair, but we were a different group of individuals, I think, as far as people of color. You had to do just what you said. We worked so hard just to be able to be accepted. So, any rate, yeah, Dad loved his job. Everybody admired the work that they did. One night, though, they had a fire at Elitch's. I think it was about July 17th, 1938. And there was another firehouse involved. It was firehouse number four. Number four got called to the fire. It was a two-alarm fire. So firehouse number three had to go cover that area. That's how they did those things in those days. So they're on their way to cover for number four. Four pulls out a little bit late, and they also had a rookie engineer driving the truck. That's what they called the gentleman who drove the trucks. You were called an engineer. The normal person who did that job called in sick, so you had someone who really had not driven that truck at the wheel in number four. But at any rate, the way they were leaving one station and number three coming to meet number four, the accident actually occurred on 20th and Larimer, and it was about 7:30 at night. It was horrific. Uh, Number three hit broadside of number four. Number four had run the light. Well, I won't say ran the light because when they're rolling like that, that still is in place that you stop. Everybody stops when you hear the fire engines coming. But um, they didn't have any way of communicating with each other like we do now. So three just broadsided number four. They said the accident was so intense that my dad's truck literally just stood up on end. The front end just literally stood up uh, all the way up in the air. Killed Captain Brooks almost immediately. The other gentleman who passed away was Jimmy Simpson, and we had the benefit of getting a lot of records from the museum, which sits down on Curtis Street, where they have all of the logs from all of the firehouses. A lot of newspaper accounts of what happened. That the gentleman Jimmy hit the ground and literally someone picked him up, kind of was holding him, and he just said, "Man, I don't think I'm going to make it. You got to get me a priest. And I think he died before he ever even got to the hospital. My father was critically injured as well. He had to have three full body transfusions because he had a head injury. It was very, very sad. The whole community was extremely upset. There was a lot of disagreement on why, again, to your point earlier, why were we not able to stop? What was wrong with the truck? Is that because of some of the faulty equipment that we might have had, not the top of the line brand new equipment, not to mention communication. But the black community was really in an uproar. They had a lot of newspaper articles in our black newspaper. They wanted to know what had happened, and they did a full investigation. And they finally took some of the onus off of Firehouse Number Three because they wanted to blame Firehouse Number Three, of course. And they found out that it was not technically our fault. So, at any rate, my father and the two other gentlemen, once they were, okay and felt that they could do desk work, they were not allowed to do desk work. So they were permanently given their retirement, which probably in today's standards isn't something that people would say, well, what's the problem? He got a little payout, got to keep his pension. But it wasn't like that in those days. A man, his job was part of who he was, and that
Right.
was a great honor to have that job. Um, some of the gentlemen who were hurt on the firehouse on the number four truck, who had pretty bad injuries themselves, maybe not as severely as my dad's, but certainly as bad as the other two gentlemen, they were allowed to go back and work on the desk. They couldn't fight fires anymore, but they were allowed to. And I think that was the added insult to injury, that they didn't have to be retired permanently the way that the black firemen were. So that
Right.
was it was tough for my
Right.
dad.
So a couple things in that, we mentioned the equipment, and it's my understanding that at the time of this accident, the truck that number three was using was like 15 years old, so obviously wasn't in the best condition.
It
The
was.
administration, of course, initially laid the fault on truck three.
Hmm. Yes.
Fortunately, that it took a while, but that was cleared up. That you know, fault was properly assigned eventually.
Yes.
Now, with your father not being allowed to at least stay on the department with a desk job, that had to have been just heartbreaking for him. I mean, because I'm sure he took so much pride in that job.
He did. Just kind of like what you said, they were the pride of the points, and they took their job very seriously. He had a bad injury, and he had a bad head injury, as I mentioned. And I think just not being able to do that work was not just physically damaging. He was already suffering from the head injury, but I think as a man and feeling like he needs to be at his job, doing his job, he did a couple of other little side jobs because he was able to work, which is
Mhm.
interesting that other people would hire him to do things, but he wasn't able to work a desk job at the fire department, which, let's I mean, if he wasn't able to work, it would have been nowhere he could have worked.
Right.
But and the other guys did too. So it was tough. And I think my mom, being the woman she was, she stuck with him. It was just rough because he would drink to get just to take away the pain. But my father was never a drinker before he got into this accident, and he didn't do very well sometimes. And he would argue and be ugly. And I can only imagine. You don't know any of those things when you see your parents go through things when you're young. You don't understand. I just kept wondering, why is he continually arguing so much? And my mom, being the woman that she was, she said, "You just don't understand why he's like this." So we endured, and God bless him. I do believe probably the cause of his ultimate death, I think, I'm sure, had a lot to do with the lack of good equipment. None of those men had good equipment because things got better over the years, but I know he breathed in a lot of junk that he should not have had to, and ultimately, I know that's he had problems with his. They had his voice box removed, and ultimately died. It was cancer. So
Right.
anyway, but
Yeah, like
yeah,
like you said, these days they've got so much more protective gear.
Yes,
And at that time, let's see, number three, they were getting the hand-me-downs,
they
as
sure
if,
were. I mean, all of it. I will say that we were able, with the help of Renee Cousins. I have to have give Terry Gentry her due because I think because she promoted this story and we were able to tell it on the news a few years ago that it caught the eye of the History Museum. And so they ultimately awarded national recognition for the firehouse. And there was a big to-do with the mayor and former Wellington Webb was there, and they had a nice story on the front page of the Post. But I think it's heartwarming that even after all this time, the firehouse, the men who fought, were given their due recognition, and everyone that I've talked to, all the men that have worked in the firehouse, said the same thing. It was an honor to work in that place to this very day. I don't know how all the firemen in other places know about Firehouse Number Three, but if you mention it, oh yeah, Firehouse Number Three. But I guess they were definitely in a league of their own. So it's an honor to see that happen for my
now,
dad.
growing up in that neighborhood, I can't tell you how many times I walked past that fire station as a kid, not knowing anything about the history of it, you know. And it's sad, but the good thing is we know now, you know.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and like I always think that the information has always been there,
Mhm.
but it's just not promoted the way some other issues are. And I'm glad that you were able to get this out there for us. Um,
Yeah.
so that kind of gets me to thinking about how things are now. And so, as a side note, we both know Mr. Roger Janelle,
Yes.
and he was, and probably the first black fire chief
Yes,
in
but
Denver.
yes,
And I'm sure you talked to him about that. And
yes, we did a nice collaboration on uh, what the story was about my dad and dad. And funny that you mentioned how we don't know what we don't know. Some of the information I had, because my father had all these beautiful pictures and all this other stuff. He said, God, I didn't know half of that stuff either. And here he is, a former chief, and he didn't know a lot of it. So, I mean, I think it's great that whatever opportunity we can have to share the history of our little small but mighty Black community in Denver. I think it's great that we're getting stories out. Justina Ford, we're getting stories out about all of the folks who lived long before us, but kind of laid the foundation for uh, for our good times here in Denver and continue to be able to just tell their story for them. So
yeah,
yeah, Roger, because
getting
he
back
was
to the
very
station,
instrumental.
the
Yeah,
firehouse,
yeah.
a couple things came to mind. Now, I know at one time there were a lot of photographs in the house of previous firemen that have worked there. Are those still available where people could go in and see those photos?
Yes, yes, they are. And I was honored to be able to add to their collection because my father had so many nice pictures that he had kept. He and my mother, I don't know how they took as many pictures as they did. I mean, considering what kind of equipment they must have.
Yeah.
Somebody had a great camera. They were taking pictures all the time. But I am so grateful that they left that to help tell that story because I truly believe your story is worth a thousand words if you have one picture. So we did leave some of the pictures there in the firehouse, got them blown up, and they're still hanging there. So yes,
Yes, I
thank
would definitely encourage anyone that has opportunity, go by there, take a look at that station. I mean, it's definitely a part of history.
you. It
Um,
is.
the other thing you mentioned, it being the oldest active firehouse and the smallest. I mean, it's the only one with one bay,
Right. Yep.
and it was built for the older
Yeah.
trucks. Can they actually get the modern trucks in there now?
Yeah, you just can't. Well, it was never designed for a hook and ladder. So
Right.
there's never going to be hook and ladders going on there ever. I have no idea why they built it so small. Sometimes I don't want to think there was some nefarious reasons, but one never knows. They can get a pumper in there. That's basically what they still can get in there. I came to find out that Dad's truck was a pumper, but it was also a chemical truck. I learned that in the middle of understanding all of these things that I never knew about the firehouse. Roger informed me that. He said, there was a chemical. I said, what chemicals? I said, oh, there were some I guess there were some chemicals that they had to fight fires with, but yeah, that's all that they can fit in there. And just another note that the firehouse museum that I mentioned
Hmm.
down on Glenarm Glenarm Court, Glenarm. Um, they have what is probably as close to what my dad's truck looked like in that museum, and it's just got a lot of great pictures, stories. They've got all the archives from all the firehouses in the city, and it's amazing. I'm hoping that they can continue to keep it renovated because they have the history of the whole fire department is down there. But it's nice. You can take kids down there. It's a nice little visit to walk through the annals of history for our fire department here in Denver.
Okay. Well, there's another trip for people to make. Go down there and visit that as well.
Yeah.
It will be. I certainly want to thank you for coming on today and giving us that little information. We love the stories. That's what it's all about, is the stories, getting them out there so people know. Because like you said, you don't know what you don't know. And we want to help you to know it. And so again, thank you so much for joining us. And I'll be looking forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. Thank you so much, AP. Appreciate you having me on. Have a great day.
All right.
Okay.